안녕하세요, 여러분. 원순이 왔습니다. 저는 너조든한 한국어 공부해요. 이거 비디오에서 저는 한국어 문장 봐주세요. And I'm sorry guys for I didn't learn any new greetings in Korean yet, but today's video is really special because I had a feeling that Korean is very similar in its grammar structure, and syntactically it's very similar to modern programming languages. But there is a bit of a gap between the idea about this and the actual proof of the fact that this is like so literally. And recently, actually, this happened yesterday. I've been studying some content by Kim Sante, who is the maintainer of Conversational Korean YouTube channel, and he was that was a very rare video of about 90 years ago. It was published around 90 years ago. It's very rare. However, it did introduce the most basic ways to ask questions like what, why, where, etc. So I've encountered a very interesting question there, which consists of, I guess, 3 words, right? But already, only within those 3 words, it has really lots of interesting grammar structures that if we just do break down those grammar structures, it really starts look like a real programming language, like as if it was written in code, right? And bear in mind the fact that I have quite pretty solid programming background. I would like to break this sentence down and just show this, just trying to show this similarities between Korean grammar and programming language. Not some certain particular programming language, but let's say some pseudocode, right? So first, let me read this sentence. I didn't memorize it yet, so I'm still practicing. I will read this from the paper that I'm just studying here. So I just want to read this from paper, then we'll write this here in Google Translate. Then we'll go for some syntactic breakdown, trying to translate every single grammar point, and then finally at the end of this video I'll show you how would I write this sentence in pseudocode as if Korean was a programming language. So if you're excited, let's actually start. So the sentence is 언제까지 하면 돼? Again, sorry, not enough breath. I'm a little bit nervous, but this is so cool. So, 언제까지 하면 돼? Okay, let's actually write this, and then listen how Google actually pronounces this, and then try to practice my pronunciation a bit more, and then go for a breakdown. So, without further ado, let's actually go. So, 언제 언제 I'm sorry I'm sorry guys. Yeah, it's not on, it's 언제, which means when, literally. And here the rock and roll starts. So 언제까지. Okay. And yeah, it seems like it's just fine how long, like a verified translation, but when we come to breaking down this particles at the end of this when question, you'll see what I mean. So the next is which means to do. 하면 is a particle that means literally if. 하면 and 돼. Until when can I do it? And you might wonder, like, what special do we have in this sentence? However, here is the trick. So let's get started. So the very first, well, actually, this when is just let's say one building block, so nothing special here. So when is just when. However, let's have a look at this one. So while being literally translated as still, which is another interesting kind of thing in regards to considering Korean to be like a programming language, which you'll see later on. Still, well, I'm not exactly sure how this ga can be translated. Well, actually, Google Translate translates this as how, and what I've realized is actually that this ga is often used in questions itself. So I don't know whether it's the matter of the verb being conjugated in somewhat a specific manner, or is this a particle? So well, actually this is a particle definitely, but it's presented as like ga g as the single particle. They don't break this down. Well, at least I didn't actually see how any like tutorials kind of breaking down this into two characters. However, what I learned from Talk to Me in Korean YouTube channel, that if we say jida in separate, this would mean to become, like in the famous phrase that I've already learned and can say hopefully quite pretty fluently in Korean, like 내일은 오늘보다 좋아질 수도 있으니까 옷을 따뜻하게 입어야 될 것 같아요. So we had there like 내일은 오늘보다 좋아질, and this 질 is like a short form from jirda, to become. So 좋아질 means like becomes, code. And when I saw this G, I thought that might be that at some point this might be the case actually. And the further, no, it's not the right translation. The right translation is to become. Okay, so it's another like. So this Jida means to become. That's what I learned from Talk to Me in Korean. So I would say that this ga G. Well, it translated as still, but literally I would translate this as how become, or maybe when become, especially in the context of this when question. This would be like when become. However, they do translate this as still. Well, I'm not sure how proper it is, but it's not the point. I just wanted to give you an idea that this G kind of originates from jida, which means to become. And this is just another interesting grammar point. So I don't know, like probably it's nobody actually tries to break down the particle and just trying to use those particles as the black boxes. However, for me personally, translations like this doesn't really make any certain sense, because it's kind of like it's not here. Okay, it can be translated. The thought on its own has been delivered. However, the translation is very free and very vague, I would say. So it's not a concrete translation. It's very general sort of a translation. So the idea is that the way how it's written in Korean is it does contain some cultural and mental sort of patterns, and these patterns are extremely important to understand in order to do two things. So first is in order to being able to think using those patterns to come up with creating your own your own Korean sentences that would sound naturally. So not trying to think in English and then translating and then thinking like, okay, I got a Korean sentence. It's not the case really, because it's really weird what we try to do. We just do translate this from English to Korean. So the first use case is just to recognize these patterns to compose a better sentences. And another use case, the second use case, is actually trying to get some sort of details behind what is said here. Some tiny little Korean language specific cultural or mental details. Yeah, all these details that cannot be directly translated using just the bare English language. So I mean, like, I've been encountering the situations where exactly the same phrase, so we have like one phrase in English and it can be translated into several phrases in Korean, and all they are totally different. So I was very confused by that fact. So like how that happens, like we have a single phrase in English, but we have several phrases in Korean. So how to distinguish between those, between all of those? So how to know which one in particular to use? So this is where understanding of this grammar patterns and breaking down even the particles on the smaller blocks might be really helpful, and that's the reason why I actually doing this. So this sort of an in-depth guide at Korean grammar patterns is something that really helps me to dig to the very gist of those patterns themselves, and then hopefully try to apply them in my speaking practice, in my dreams one day. So here is the first part. So it's kind of like how to become and when. So when, how, become. So this is the first part if we translate this literally, and the second part is even more interesting. So ha comes from hada, which means to do. So ha, so hada is the dictionary form, ha is the present tense, haso is the past tense, hasoyo past tense with polite ending, and halgoya or halgoyo, or maybe this liulpatsim even not been pronounced there, I'm not sure. I don't even know. Okay, doesn't matter at the moment. So we have the verb to do. Notice this, we have this verb to do. So I just write this right over in here. So we have this verb to do. So ha, it's like I don't know, it doesn't even translate. Actually, this is the to do verb. So do, and myon is a particle which means if. And this is one of the core things that reminds me programming language, really, like the conditional if operator. Okay, but we'll come to this a little bit later on. And so yeah, let's input this myon in. So I really love how this myon sounds. So I really love this yo sounds in Korean. They really ear-pleasing sounds, right? So myon means if, and this one is also interesting. So doe, so doe means done, but again, like it's kind of like really hard to translate this outside of the context. So that's another little issue, and I'm not really sure. So this should be like a verb basically. So I'm not sure whether the dictionary form would be do ha da. Let's actually try to check this. So I think this should be something like do ha da. So let's try do ha da. Yeah, and actually also translates like do, but actually ha da means like do. But what's the do? So this might be oh my god, guys, sorry, I just need to reference my Korean particles. Sorry guys, here are my Korean particles. Yeah, by the way, I also have them. I've also created a tiny little it's hard to call it a website, but some sort of a interactive dictionary. So do I have this too? Yeah, so here it is. To means to, so it's like also to do or something like that. However, I'm not sure whether in this particular case this might be treated as the separate, or maybe this is just phonetically. Well, I don't know. Can this be considered as to or not? Because if this was a particle, it should probably go at the end of the word, not in front of it. However, it happens quite often, like 주세요, like please. However, 주 is to give, so it's it's really I have very little experience in Korean at the moment to answer this question, but the idea is I guess that this is probably the present form of this verb being conjugated. However, I might be wrong, but it's not the case really. It's not really what I wanted to emphasize. So if you just have a look at the literal translation, it doesn't really make that much sense. So we have like when, till, I don't know why it's translated as lose. It should be to become. So when, till, become, do, if, done, and also do. Does it remind you something, guys? If any programmers watching this video, what can you see here? Do, if, done, become, till, when? And I just, without further ado, I just want to share what comes into my head, and here it is. So I just is this? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is not the case. I just want to open my image here, and let's go full screen. So yeah, let me put my face over here. So this is actually what I see, what comes into my head when I have a look at this sentence. And again, like for those of you who is not aware, who are not programmers, it won't probably make that much sense. However, for those who are the programmers or have some relations to programming, I guess this might be really interesting. So let's break down and let's have a look. So the first thing that this gaji, which literally till, what this reminds me, it reminds me the do while loop. So I would say that this while, so we have a do while loop, so we need to do something within the loop until the condition has been reached. So this is the condition that has been reached, so doe, and doe like done. So until it's not done, which I literally emphasize here, so while it's not done, or I would say like gaji and not done, like gaji on doe, gaji on doe. Yeah, that's how I would say this in Korean. So while not done, gaji on doe, and while this is not done, we actually do our loop, right? And now we have the condition. So we have another. Well, again, like it's hard to say whether this to do and this done is about the same thing. However, bearing in mind the context itself, it feels like this is exactly the same action we're talking about. So if this is translated literally, if this is translated as until when can I do it? So we have the only do in the English translation. So we're talking about something that I can do, and I just need to know like until when can I be proceeding? Can I be going on with this sort of a thing, right? So we can assume that this ha and this toe are about the same action. So that's the reason why I use toe as the condition for to escape from this while loop, right? And that's the reason why I think that this ha is the condition for if. But we have this ha myeon. So myeon means if, and in Korean the syntax is the following. So we put if at the end of the condition to either compare, or like in our case it's a matter of understanding whether this is the true or false, right? So like in programming language it's like if done, but in Korean it's like da do if. So if do, but in our context this is like if done. So this is like myeon and ha, right? But actually ha myeon, right? So and if this is done, in this case we actually need to do what we are talking about. And we actually want the gist essence of this entire question is until when. So until comes out of the context because we do this within the loop, so it's quite pretty clear that this until would be somewhere within this loop. And bear in mind the fact that the when, which is the core essence of the program itself, only comes if it's if it's already done, right? Only in that case we can actually print this when. And well, I didn't run this code, so maybe there is some logical mistake in it. I didn't actually. This is the pseudocode. This is just for fun, guys. But I'm just trying to deliver the gist idea behind what am I thinking. So the idea is that this part of a program would be entered at the very last iteration of this do while loop. So when this is done, then we print this when, which is what we want to know. So until when, so like what we want to know until when, and probably when like print until when. Well, let's just print when. And bear in mind the fact that this is the very last iteration. This means like that after this has been oh, okay, I just forgot yeah, I forgot one little line here, guys. I'm sorry. Just to make sure that this is the very last line of this is the very last iteration of this entire loop. I would need to open the curly braces and close them here, and here below the print when I need to say done equals to true. And before this, I should have said like done equals to false, like it's not done yet, and then hence we are within this loop. And after we printing this, we just set this done flag equals to true, and this condition like not done or literally done equals to false is no longer on the cards, is no longer satisfied, and that's the reason why we break out of this loop. So, well, obviously this is just for fun, and I'm just kidding, guys, and I'm not really serious about this. However, like I believe that one of the most important things in Korean grammar in particular is exactly trying to reveal those hidden grammar patterns that are not on the surface really. And I didn't yet find any tutorial online that would have gone for this sort of a internal pattern explanation. I mean, this sort of a patterns, so I mean like code, this pseudocode is something that actually allows us to highlight the pattern itself. So we have kind of like a loop. And why do we have a loop? Because of this ga-ji. So this ga-ji, to me personally, when I see this ga-ji ending or particle, sorry, when I see this ga-ji particle, it gives me a certain idea that we are talking about some sort of a loop, some sort of a time frame, and there is some sort of a stuff that happens within this time frame. And this is the stuff that happens within the time frame, right? And this is the condition, like when this sort of a loop actually comes to the end, like the very last iteration. So the condition to escape from this sort of a loop, right? So that is what comes into my head kind of like instantly. And I had some more interesting examples of this sort of things, like in my favorite sentence, like so tomorrow, because of tomorrow it should be colder than today, you need to put up some warmer clothes to close warmly. So 내일은 오늘보다. So 내일은 tomorrow, 오늘 today, 보다 like comparing than or as opposed to. So 내일은 오늘보다 is something like tomorrow as opposed to today, or tomorrow being compared to today, and then the topic that we're talking about, right? And then the topic comes like 좋아질. Just okay, guys. This might sound a little bit weird. So the sentence I'm talking about is this one. So 내일은 오늘보다 좋아질 수도 있으니까 옷을 따뜻하게 입어야 될 것 같아요. So I've just been saying this really hundreds of times already, and you can have a look in the video within this sort of a playlist when I just was mastering this sort of a sentence. I could hardly read this. I could hardly read through this as well. And then eventually I've been practicing it just to speak it loud. And then I made the previous video. Apparently, there was a breakdown of this sort of a sentence, and I even tried to derive a new sentence from this one. And this sentence is the first occurrence of this sort of a Korean like programming language comparison. So even in the previous video, I already tried this, try to bring something like this. I was doing this in the Google Translate, and that wasn't really clear, and probably nobody really even did understand what I meant there. However, for those of you who are aware of how to code, at least in principle, in general, I think this sort of a comparison would be very beneficial in terms of the fact that it clearly shows the structure, the pattern. So what is really good about the source code, about programming in general, it lets your mind to be calm, clear, and concise. And altogether, it puts your mind and thoughts in order. And what I can say, like, if you will ask me, like, describe in one phrase, like, how Korean is different from English. So Korean is way more ordered language compared to English. So Korean is very structured. It's very like, especially this polite endings, non-polite, formal, informal, etc. There are really lots of those, really overwhelming for beginners like me. However, I really love this straightforward approach. So when you walk through the certain grammar pattern, you feel like you just have a wall on the left, you have a wall on the right, and you're not gonna shift your path. So you just make sure that you go straight ahead and not going sideways. And that's like just to make sure that you actually will reach the destination point, which in my case, like, it would be fluency one day and try to start making videos completely in Korean for native Korean speakers one day in my dreams again. Like, so this is kind of it, guys. And again, like, obviously this is a joke at some point, but the serious part, just to emphasize this one last time, and then we'll just finish. The serious part is that the more Korean phrases I encounter, the more this like patterns I do recognize. And currently, I'm actually preparing a new format of videos on how I learn Korean. So I found an amazing resource where we have Korean dramas with Korean subtitles, and I have lots of Korean dramas there that we've been watching with my wife during late winter evenings, right? And I'm already aware of what the K-dramas are all about, so the plot, the characters, all the stuff. So now I can focus at the dialogues. So the next thing that I'm going to be preparing is actually the dialogues. So I just want to take the actual dialects being pronounced, spoken out loudly by native speakers, and try to learn them, memorize, read them, try to like pass them through Google Translate, and try to recognize some hidden patterns like this one, like this funny one. So that's the idea. And just the very last thing, I've realized the fact that all the sentences that I do try to compose on my own, like think in English and then try to translate to Korean, and that's not the way to go, definitely. And I don't know how it should sound, but it sounds so horrible to me, even though I'm not a native speaker and I have no idea how it should sound. But it sounds so horribly that I do realize that that's definitely not the way to go. And that's the reason why I've realized that probably the most essential thing regarding learning Korean is trying to reveal this mental patterns, cultural patterns, whatever, grammar patterns, like all these patterns are being encoded into the Korean grammar itself. And this is just my code Makikin's way of revealing those hidden patterns. So I will still be trying emphasizing these exact patterns in the later videos, because for Western people, I think this is the biggest issue, basically, because you can learn the vocabulary, you can learn the grammar, you can compose correct sentences. However, you may sound in Korean, and probably Korean would even understand what you're talking about. However, you would sound weird, and without the idea about these patterns, it's probably impossible to actually try to sound like native. And for me personally, one of the major reasons to learn the language is not just being able to communicate, although that's the case as well. But for me personally, one of the main reasons is trying to feel the flow, the internal meaning behind this grammar structures, behind these grammar patterns. So trying to reveal the true mentality and try to merge into this true mentality, try to merge that mentality into my own consciousness, and trying to be Korean when I speak Korean. That's the idea. And for me personally, that's not only the goal, but also the path and the approach of how to proceed. Okay guys, so this is it from my side, and let me just make my breath a little bit calm. Sorry, I just feel a little bit too excited and too nervous, so I just try to say something in Korean at the very end. So 이거 비디오 봐주세요. And yeah, 이거 비디오 봐주세요. 감사합니다. 이거 비디오 좋아해. 감사합니다. And yeah, so this is it guys. Sorry, still feel a little bit too excited. So this is it from my side. Korean drama, some dialects from K-dramas hopefully coming soon. So until the next time, and take care.